Welcome to the Saturday in Athens podcast. I am your host, Seth Saunders, and I am fired up for many reasons today. Two of them because we have a couple of firsts. One being that for the first time in show history, we have siblings on the show. And also, we have the most guests at one time that we have ever had on the show. So we're checking a couple of first boxes today. We are more than delighted to have the Hsu siblings on the show today. We have Howard, Anita, and Ron, who, if you are in Atlanta, I'm sure you have probably at least once been to one of their restaurants. We are more than jacked up to hear their story today. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you for having us, Seth.
Thanks, Seth.
And go dogs.
Go dogs. So part of the reason that we are chatting today is because y'all were kind enough to invite us to co-host a watch party with y'all for the Dogs Kentucky game on Saturday night. That will be going on at Sweet Auburn. And we are just elated about it. Can't wait to get there and hang out. Why don't you tell us a little bit to start about Sweet Auburn Barbecue and the opportunity for folks to come out and cheer on the Dogs Saturday night.
All right. Yeah. Well, I'll go first since, Sweet Auburn Barbecue kind of started organically. Always been a fat kid at heart and loved barbecue. But it wasn't until my neighbor at one of my other restaurants, he owned a pizza place, and he was like, I'm going to get into barbecue. So he went out and bought a smoker, and I would just walk out the back door and go hang out with him while he cooked barbecue. And, we sit there, talk like people do over a grill, over a smoker. And eventually he was like, well, why don't you partner with me? You got some good ideas. You're a restaurant guy too. So we shook hands, and I paid him half of the cost of that smoker, and we started hitting the streets of Atlanta, doing food truck stuff and festivals, concerts, and eventually landed in a place called the Sweet Auburn Curb Market and selling in that parking lot. And they would eventually we'd sell out almost every weekend there with our food truck, and eventually they invited us in to set up in the Sweet Auburn Market in a little food stall. So that's where we became legit and incorporated the name and adopted Sweet Auburn Barbecue. And from there, 3 years later, moved to the Ponce Highland neighborhood of Atlanta, Georgia, and opened up a full service place with craft cocktails, cold beer, and good vibes and good barbecue.
So in getting into y'all's story, I want to start with this. I am a fan of telling people, I have 4 kids of my own, and I am a fan of telling people that you are what you eat when it comes to raising kids. And so you got to do your best to be a good example for them and try to be something that they can look to and draw off of as they're growing into their own selves. And I'm especially interested in hearing about y'all's parents and the influence that they've had on y'all and the kind of blueprint they've laid out as y'all have followed your respective paths.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. So our parents were immigrants to the U.S., and they both came from Malaysia, which is not a very affluent country. And so they came here with the American dream to provide a better opportunity for their family and their kids. Our parents ended up at one point having 7 restaurants, Chinese American restaurants called Hunan Village. Howard, Ron, and I have all worked. We all grew up working in their restaurants, whether it's like snapping snow peas or wiping down tables or cooking in the kitchen. We've done it all. I think our parents instilled in us that, we should be very fortunate to be in this country, and that hard work is a privilege, and that in some places you don't even have an opportunity to have a job. And they've been. But as far as food, man, my grandmother was the town caterer for her small village. And so food has been in our family for like several generations. Both my parents are chefs. Chef Ron, Chef Howard, and I, we've all, cooked in our restaurants. And so our parents taught us that food was a vehicle to show affection and build community. When they first came to the U.S., they barely spoke English, but they were able to build relationships through their food, right? Like if you put love and care into your food and someone eats it, they're going to feel that love and care. And so to this day, Howard, Ron, and I, if we go to Stockbridge, Georgia, which is where our parents' first Chinese restaurant was in Georgia, and we're actually in Henry County, people still stop us and they're like, "Hey, are you Betty Sue and George Sue's kid?" I remember seeing you guys grow up like running around the restaurant. And I mean, my parents were kind of like local celebrities because they were the first Chinese restaurant in all of Henry County. And everyone ate there. And everyone knew my parents because they were just good people and loved to show their community, their way of showing love. So they've taught us to make sure to care about your food and share that with people you love.
Oh, I love that. And obviously they had an entrepreneurial spirit, right? And so seeing them develop their businesses, maintain their businesses, and then all three of you have obviously followed in that path. I just think that's such a beautiful story to kind of, for y'all to watch their example and then to grow into that yourselves. Like, I just think it's such a beautiful thing. I mean, was that always something that the three of you were looking towards, or was it more as you got older, you said, you know what, this is a business that we love and this is something that we want to pursue?
I think we all have our different stories. Ron, I don't know. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure, I'll just speak on my story. But I went to UGA for 2 years before I really wanted to pursue a field in the culinary arts. And it was just kind of, I think I was in the Terry School of Business and falling asleep in Accounting 101, learning about debits and credits and whatever. And I'm like, I cannot do this the rest of my life. And I had always worked part-time cooking. I worked in a little restaurant called Speakeasy, which was above another really good restaurant in downtown Athens called 5 Star Day. And I also grew up, I was more in the kitchen growing up in my parents' restaurant. So food was always, in my life, even in college. And I was going through that quarter life crisis and at UGA, like, what am I going to do with my life? I don't like a business, blah, blah, blah. And my roommate at the time was like, why don't you cook? And, I always had this preconceived notion that my parents wanted me to steer away from the restaurant because they did it. It was hard. So I devised this plan. Like, I was like, you know what? I'm going to tell my mother I'll get my degree in business, but afterwards I'm going to drop or finish and go to culinary school. And so I proposed that idea to my mother, and she was like, why waste your time? Drop out next semester. Don't, so she was behind me 110%. And so I did. And at that time I was looking to study abroad in Australia. And so my mom was actually like, why don't you see if they have a good culinary program in Australia so you can still travel, see the world. And so I did, and that was really kind of the start of my journey. So I went to Sydney, Australia to study for about a year and a half, came back, worked in Virginia Highlands in a restaurant called Dish, which is now Diesel. Dad's, because it went from Dish to Diesel, now it's Dad's. And then from there I went up to New York, and they say the rest is history. And now I'm back in Atlanta. So that's the abbreviated version of my story.
Yeah, for me, I actually, because we worked in the restaurant my whole life, I didn't want to work in the restaurant business for when I got out of high school. I was like pre-med at UGA. South Campus, was my stomping grounds. And but I loved to cook and I loved creating memories over food. So I'd have friends over into my apartment all the time. I'd cook for them. Parties were always revolving around food. But I got a degree, or I got a scholarship through the honors program to go study in China for acupuncture. And I did that for a few months, and it was a great experience, but it taught me that I didn't want to be stuck in four walls around sick people all the time. I could do it as a sense of purpose, but it didn't pull to my creative side. And so I told myself I was going to finish my senior year because I only had 1 year left. And that last year, I was doing some soul searching, and I decided I wanted to open up my first restaurant, which was a burrito shop, Gezzo's. And so the last year I was in my apartment, and I would invite friends over, and I'd do recipe testing on them. I'd make like different salsas, and I'd do different marinades, and like grill steak, and make chicken tacos and stuff. And so all my friends at UGA were my test bunnies. And they would give me feedback, and literally we had signed our first lease with Howard, and my mom and dad were my backers before I even graduated my senior year. And so I literally got my diploma and went to work the next day at my first restaurant. So it was going to be like, I'm going to do this and figure out what I want to do next, but ended up being really good at it and finding a lot of joy in it. And so I've been doing it the rest of, till today.
How about you, Howard?
Yeah, similar story with Anita. I grew up kind of resenting the restaurant business because every weekend I had to bus tables and wash dishes and fry egg rolls. But I think after college I didn't know what I wanted to do after Georgia, and I was like, well, Georgia has a great law school, so I went to Barnes and Noble and bought like a LSAT prep book, and I bought it, took it home, read it at the Blue Sky Coffee downtown for like maybe 20 minutes. Like, no, that's not me either. So I just kind of like, I ended up working with a friend, his company doing import export, but then 9/11 happened, and then it shut down their business. And so I went home and started helping my mom revive her business and just kind of help her, and kind of realized I got into the whole creativity side of business, but also restaurant business, very creative. And the more I got into it, the more I enjoyed leading a team and being a leader. I think Coach Smart inspires the shit out of me about, just attack the day, everything he says, I'm like, man, I'm going to apply that to my team today, So that's my kind of story. I don't know if anything from Terry College of Business is super helpful, because I don't remember much of it, partying in Athens too much. So, but I'm sure some of it's back there and it's helpful. So, yeah.
So I've heard all of you talk about like the art and the creativity piece of it, and I find that fascinating. I love to cook at home, so certainly not on the level that y'all are at, but I do think there is some beauty and so much creativity in food in a way that touches and resonates with people. Is that a big driver for all three of you, number one? And number two, is it something that brings you joy individually, kind of being able to express that piece of yourself through the restaurants and through your food?
For sure. For me, it's not just the food, but it's the vibe, the energy, the music, the decor, the guest experience. Even for the staff and how they greet a table or greet a guest, and the uniform they wear. So all that's super creative for me. And even like what we're doing with the random message to you saying, hey, Seth, what do you think about hosting a watch party? And it was very random, but I was like, man, that'd be so cool. And you were so down to do it that it got me fired up. These are the moments, the connecting with people and having a good time and being creative on how you create experience really, really gets me going.
Yeah, I would agree with Howard. I think that, again, going back to my story, like that's the whole reason why I got into the restaurant business, was so that I could be creative. And, again, there's more than just the food. The food's definitely the center piece, but menu design, decor, cocktails, the uniform, what they wear, the sauce bottles that we package. I mean, all of it. There's so many ways that we can express ourselves. And Sweet Auburn Barbecue really is a reflection of, I think, our upbringing. We grew up in the South eating barbecue, so we love it. It's comfort food for us. But being Asian, we also grew up eating, ginger, soy, Szechuan peppercorns, those sort of flavors. And so at Sweet Auburn, we're able to infuse a lot of those Asian ingredients into our barbecue, which is, I think, what makes us a little different and still resonates with us, who we are.
Yeah, I kind of fall in line with my siblings.
But what got me into the culinary arts wasn't really the creative side of that, because as a chef, you don't really get the opportunity to be a creative until you're one of the top dogs, right? Like if you're the safety for the Georgia Bulldog defense, you're not calling the defense or constructing it. That's Kirby Smart doing that, right? So for me, it was more about the discipline that it took to be a good chef, doing the grind every day, improving 1% every day, and earning your way through the ranks of a kitchen. And then once you do all that hard work, if you prove yourself, then you get the privilege to be creative. But for me, what's great about the creativity part is it's a way to self-express yourself, or it's a way to self-expression. But it's always evolving, right? Like I know growing up, yes, I ate barbecue and I grew up in an Asian restaurant, but further along in my career, after going to France and Japan and meeting all these other chefs, like you can incorporate that into your creative process, and even the creative things that you put out there will evolve. And that's what I think is great, is that it's an ongoing process, and there's never a cap to the things you can achieve if you have the right creative approach.
I want to circle back and talk a little bit more about Sweet Auburn Barbecue's origin story, because one of the things I find really cool about it is that even its name wasn't in place when the business started, right? And like, I couldn't find anything, so correct me if I'm wrong on this, but my research did fail me in some ways. But when it started, it didn't have a name, right? It was just in a trailer selling barbecue, and then it evolved into the spot at Sweet Auburn Curb Market.
Yeah. Dave, who owned the pizza franchise, CC's Pizza, 5 spaces down from Anita and I's burrito shop, had bought a trailer, and he was taking it to local elementary schools, spring flings, that type of thing, walkathons, and it literally had a slice of pizza on the side of the trailer, and it said pizza, wings, and more, like in bold, basic ass black letters, right? And he was like, this ain't cutting it. I'm gonna go buy a smoker. So and when he bought the smoker, we were like, well, it's going to cost a lot of money to change the graphics. Let's just hang a banner over it and say barbecue, right? So it was just barbecue. But you're right, man. We did that for like several months, and we just went all over town, and wherever would let us set up, we would sell barbecue. And then that's when one of the places was the Sweet Auburn Curb Market, and they were hosting food trucks. So we would go there Saturday with our trailer, and people loved it, and we'd sell out, and after doing that maybe 6 or 7 times, that's when we got invited to set up shop in the market. And we were just kicking around. A friend of mine was like, we were trying to figure out what to name it, and he eventually just said, why don't you just call it Sweet Auburn Barbecue? That's where you're at. And I was like, man, that sounds kind of good. The only drawback is a lot of people think it's affiliated with Auburn, right? Yeah. And I'm like, we're dogs here. I respect, I'm cool with any SEC team, but we're all about the dogs, So I'm good with any SEC team unless you're playing the dogs. So
I'll tell y'all a funny story about doing the show. When we have done our interviews, and we'll do some of these questions with y'all, we ask the guests questions that are UGA related. And one of the questions that we've asked is, who is your favorite rivalry that the dogs have? And my co-host and I just assumed, right, that the answer wholesale would be Florida. Like, everybody hates Florida, it'll be Florida. That has not been the case. I would say like 75 to 80% of our guests, it's Auburn, and there's not even like a hesitation. And I think there's obviously some geography in that, but also like high schools, a lot of folks, half the high school go to Auburn, half the high school go to UGA, and there's like all this built-in rivalry. So it's been very fascinating. So I think it's interesting that you bring that up.
Yeah, I think for me, going to Georgia back when Peyton Manning was playing us, right? So Tennessee is my. I wouldn't say I like them all, right? Auburn, Tennessee, Florida, Bama, but Tennessee kind of holds a little place of hatred in my heart.
Yeah. It is funny too, I think, how that answer changes depending on like when you were at school, because our more recent grads that we interview, it's Alabama, right? Like that's we hate Alabama, which I think for many years wouldn't even have been considered a rivalry per se. It's not an every year game. There's not I would say a ton of history between the two schools from a football perspective. But then obviously the last decade, that's all changed drastically. So it's been really interesting. Okay, I want to back up in the story a little bit because I do want to hear about Gezzo's because that was the start of the restaurant journey, right? So tell me about kind of what the origins of that were and its story.
Yeah, so it started, as I kind of alluded earlier, in my apartment in Athens. Howard and I, I think overlapped 1 or 2 years at UGA. And it was during the time when like burrito shops first came on to the scene. And there was the first burrito shop in Athens called Qdoba over there on, I think it was, what is that? Over where the Harris Teeter used to be. Howard, do you remember what street that is? What is that? Broad?
Commerce, maybe?
Not Commerce.
I don't know. I can't remember.
Yeah, we're that old. But anyhow, so Howard and I used to eat there, and we were like, dude, this is so good. And my last year of college, when I kind of had this epitome of like, maybe I should open up a restaurant. And I thought like a burrito shop would be really cool because it's new on the scene. People love it. And so I worked at the Qdoba for a little bit just to kind of R&D and see if this was something I really wanted to do. And I was like, this is a piece of cake compared to our parents' like full service restaurant where we have hosts, servers, bartenders, all the whole thing. And all I have to do is manage like a cashier, some cooks, and then a few people rolling burritos. And I brought the idea to Howard, who I knew was kind of transitioning out of what he was doing, and he was helping my mom. And I was like, hey, do you want to open up this burrito shop together? And he was down, and my mom was willing to support us. And we always loved Mexican food. In fact, like the first, we were the first Chinese restaurant, Hunan Village in Henry County. And the other restaurant, La Guadalajara, was the only Mexican and first Mexican restaurant there. And both sets of families were immigrants. And so my family ate there all the time, and that family ate at our restaurant all the time. And so really, we grew up eating like, guacamole and tacos and all that all the time. And so I really love that kind of cuisine, Mexican cuisine. And so it just kind of resonated with me. And so, yeah, Howard and I decided we wanted to do that. And my parents were supportive. So we ended up finding a location in Morrow, which is about 15 minutes from where we grew up in Stockbridge. And that was our first location. And then our second location was in McDonough, Georgia. And so since then, unfortunately, the one in Morrow has closed, but we then now have also another one in Locust Grove. And we've been doing, Gezzo's for over 23 years now. So
wow.
Strong. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible. Well, I want to pivot to, and we have to talk about Lazy Betty, Michelin star for the restaurant, which is, look, if you're listening and you're not familiar with the restaurant scene and the food scene, I mean, Michelin star, good as it gets. So first off, congratulations on that. That is just beyond outstanding. The other thing is, I was thinking about this when I was researching for the interview today. If y'all were a football offense, y'all would have so many different sets. There are just so many different pieces in play, which I love. And so depending on what your mood is and what you want, you can kind of hit a lot of different things. And Ron, I think it's cool how you framed working hard to then earn the ability to be creative. And so what has that been like, I think, from a fulfillment perspective to have Lazy Betty and to see it grow and have the success that it's had?
Well, in terms of fulfillment, I mean, it was a very, there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that went into opening up the restaurant. It put a lot of, just straight up, Seth, a lot of strain on my relationship with everyone close in my life, not just my siblings, my wife, my business partners, man. Our mother passed away 4 months into it, so that's also tied into the business. So there's a lot of passion in it and emotion.
Her name was Betty.
Yeah, so I named the restaurant after my sister came up with the name, but I ran with it. And so So, and also, man, like even though we're business owners, restaurants they're not money makers, right? Like even the most successful restaurants, they'll provide you with a decent living, but you're not going to go be in a yacht, right? Like you're not driving a private jet or something like that. So the fulfillment came after, so when we're raising the money, I actually put all my money into the business. I couldn't even afford a car. I was biking to work. I would live 2.5 miles. I was like, I couldn't even afford a car. I was literally biking to work until my mom passed away and I inherited a car. And so once we opened the restaurant and there was a lot of success, and we knew there was going to be financial success too, not just the accolades, the James Beard, Atlanta's best restaurant. It was just the fact that I knew I would be able to put food on the table for my wife, who we just given birth. We had a 4-month-old or 9-month-old at home at the time. So it was just a big financial relief for me. I put everything on the line, and once I knew it was going to be good, for me that was what was the most fulfilling. And then all the awards that came were just icing on the cake, to be honest, man. And so I'm just getting a little choked up because it's a very emotional story. But I remember when we got nominated for best new restaurant by the James Beard in our inaugural year, I was sitting in the restaurant by myself and I was just crying, and I could feel my mom's love and heart like showering on me. And so that's the level of fulfillment that I have. And it's really been a lot for me personally. And that's kind of where I'm at, man. It's like me being able to provide for my family is like, I guess, Georgia winning the national championship after 40 years, really. Like all that other stuff, the Michelin, James Beard, like it's good, man. But that's not why I did it. I just love to cook and I love running a restaurant and being part of a team.
My brother is the example of just win the day, right? Win the day, win the game at hand. I don't care if it's Tennessee Tech. You better play hard today, and as long as you do that, you'll get to the playoffs, and then eventually you'll get there. But you got to do the grind. You got to do the grind, and you got to be motivated more than just the win or the glory. It's the passion.
For me, it's not about the result. It's about the process. It's about building upon what you just got to get better one day at a time, 1% better every day. It doesn't matter. Many people would consider us the best restaurant in Atlanta, but it's like, I don't care. It's like, I'm not competing with everyone else. I'm competing with myself. You recognize what you can get better at, and that's what you attack the next day. And that's really, so that's the fulfillment for me, is the process. It's everything I put on the line, financially, emotionally, knowing that the heart I put into it is gonna, it'll be okay. So sorry, dude.
Yeah, brother, you got nothing to apologize about, man. Thank you for sharing your heart and for telling us that, man. I mean, that's beautiful. That's in all honesty, that's why we do the interview series, is for this, right? Is to share stories and for people to get to see other people's hearts. And there's no greater example of that than the story that you shared. So thank you. I mean, that's beautiful. And if it can make the restaurant even, I feel like, more attractive, that has to, right? Because there's so much heart and soul behind the restaurant. So I'm very grateful for you sharing that. So yeah, and you should be proud of you.
A good question. You hit me right in the heart. You're a good interviewer.
Well, I want to ask you guys this. I'm sure you get asked this a lot, but I'm particularly interested in it because I have a lot of siblings. I have 4 brothers and a sister, and so I was thinking about this as I was reading y'all's story about all of us working together and trying to build something. And I think in some ways we'd be like the Avengers, right? Like we'd be unbeatable because we all have our talents and we all have the things that if we united would be great. But I also think there could be like Avengers Civil War between us to pull a Marvel reference. So I'm sure there are pieces of that in y'all's story. What have been the gifts and the challenges of growing these businesses together as siblings?
Man, it's family dynamic, man. If you wanna pitch Netflix, you'll probably make a lot of money on the drama the Hsu family has.
So like people ask us this question all the time, and I'm not gonna get into the nitty gritty of our issues, but what I say, man, is like when you choose to work with family, the stakes are high because you're putting your family on the line. And so if shit goes down, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse, but if they go, all right, if shit goes down, man, like you're gonna lose. You could lose people that have been in your life your whole life, and so.
I think for me, just like anything important in life, right? Like there's benefits and there's also some costs to it. But I think having all of us growing up in the restaurant business, we went into it knowing that it's going to be challenging. But at the end of the day, there's no one else I'd rather be in business with than my brothers. I mean, Ron's a super talented chef. He's passionate. He's like one of the hardest working people I know. I trust him to put in his 100% every day. And same with Howard. I know his strengths, his weaknesses, but at the end of the day, it's like you just commit to it. Does that make sense? Like,
yep.
It doesn't matter. We're gonna get in fights. It's not if, it's when. And the likelihood is it's going to be more often because we care so much about each other and we care so much about making sure we're putting the best product and the best experience out there for our community. But it's how you pick yourself back up. It's how we continue to love each other. Now, sometimes we go on breaks. There'll be times when I don't see Ron for several weeks or Howard several weeks because I just need my space. But it's never forever. It's always we need space or, hey, we just need to decompress. But it's always with the intention of we're going to get back in it. We're going to get back in the grind. We're going to continue to lift each other up. We're going to continue to drive towards being the best that we can be. And so for me, I think that's the unspoken beauty and reason why we have been successful in what we've done is because we just don't, giving up is not an option to family. Family is important. Our parents always said friends can come and go, but your family is there forever. And so we've always realized that through thick and thin.
Yeah, I feel like in football, what gets thrown around us a lot is that with your teammates, you want to be in the foxhole together, right? You want to have foxhole brothers on a football team. And I feel like there's probably nobody y'all would rather be in the foxhole with than the three of each other, right? And kind of knowing that regardless of what happens, you're going to have each other. You're always going to be there for each other. Because I think that for me, in reading y'all's story, that's what hit me most was that I was thinking about, like if this was my family, how that would be. And I thought about like all the fireworks that could certainly happen. But then I also thought, at the end of the day, even if things went sideways, knowing that I had them with me would make it a much more tolerable and enjoyable journey, regardless of the highs and the lows of it, right? So I would imagine it's probably that for y'all as well.
I mean, running a restaurant business or any business or life in general, there's some dark times and you need that support from your loved ones. And I've loved working with Anita and Ron, and I've honestly learned a lot from them. So, I couldn't have done it without both of them. I feel like I'm better for it to do it with my siblings.
All right, I've asked you all the heavy questions. Now I'm gonna have some fun with you guys, okay? So we usually close all of our interviews with something called the Smart 16, where we ask 16 UGA related questions in honor of Coach Smart's number when he was at Georgia. I'm not gonna do the full 16 with you because I know y'all are very busy and have things to do. So I'm gonna pick a few and have each of you answer. All right. So first question, this is one of our favorites. You get to choose the headlining act at the Georgia Theater for one night. Who do you choose?
I'd probably pick Panic, just because that's Athens. My time at Athens, right? Widespread Panic. So it would just bring back memories. I love them. I don't listen to them anymore, but it was what you listened to at my time at Georgia. Yeah.
I would say, gosh, this is a very hard one. Maybe maybe Dave Matthews, because similarly, that's kind of like was my time. Like when I grew up, like transitioning from high school to college, Dave Matthews was just coming up and big. And I think it'd be really cool to see him play at the Georgia Theater for sure. Sorry. I was going to say, I also grew up seeing Jennifer Nettles when she was just by herself at the 40 Watt. I mean, you could just walk in and she'd be there playing a show a month. And it was just like her on stage with, various bands. And I mean, now she's like freaking superstar.
Jennifer Nettles could sing the phone book and it would sound good.
Oh my God, I know. And being able to see at the 40 Watt where you're right there.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Mine would be Outkast, 100%. I've seen them in Athens a few times, so I definitely go with Outkast, and they're Georgia natives. So
that's an outstanding answer, and that's one we have not gotten yet.
Really?
So yes.
Man, I'm so surprised no one has said Outkast.
Oh, that's a good answer. I love that. Yep, that's a good one. That's on my brother and I's game day playlist. It's multiple Outkast selections. So I love that. That's a great answer. Okay, I'm particularly keen on y'all's answer to this. One of our other questions that we generally ask is: you are back in the Classic City for one meal and one meal only. Where are you going to eat?
I'll take this one. I'm probably going to go to 5 and 10. Because that is one of the first meals that kind of really opened my eyes to a different level of cooking. And I believe it was my quote unquote exit meal from when I left Georgia. I was like, I'm going to have one good meal. So I will take 5 and
10. I have a few. I would say, as usual, I love food and, eating is like my favorite pastime. But Weaver D's, is Weaver D's still around? I lived down the street from Weaver D's, and it was just like, the most terrible food you could eat as far as for your arteries. But I'd go on a run, and then that's what I would crave. And it was cheap, it was good, and the food from the soul. I remember their crackling cornbread, like it was just like delicious. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I heard the Grit has closed, but that always had a special place in my heart too. Their tofu bowl was amazing. So,
how about you, Howard?
I'd say the Grit just for nostalgia, late night burger and their big fat fries or potatoes. I don't even know if they're French fries. I also lived out.
Howard, do you mean the grill or the Grit? The burger?
Oh, the grill. Yeah. Downtown, not the Grit. Yeah, not the Grit. I'm not. Yeah. And then Peking up out there because that's where my apartment was freshman year, just eating Chinese food. And then what's my last? A 5-star day. I really like the kind of comfort food of 5-star day. That was really good.
And can't forget Caliente Cab and Agualinda. Those are good.
Orinoco's.
Orinoco's was good.
Express. Yeah.
This is usually the question. People are like, one? I can't just do one.
Which dining hall, really?
Yeah, we're probably showing you our age right now by naming all these spots.
That's okay. Because it's my age group, so I'm good with it. Yeah, I love that. Okay, here's one that we usually ask that. Let's just say the answer on this one has been pretty uniform across a couple games, but what is the Georgia loss that you're still not over?
Oh man, I'm gonna say the what was it, the national championship against Bama when it was 4th and 23 and they bombed it and we lost it on that. What was that? 2021, I think maybe. That was heart crushing.
It was, God, I forgot. I think I saw it last night. Was it? It was a game for the national championship to play Notre Dame in Miami.
Yeah. The 2012 SEC title game.
That's what it was. Yeah. Well, and it was Bama, right? Was it Bama?
Yep.
Yeah. And Eason, was it Eason or
Prom? Aaron Murray.
Murray. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like down to the wire, man. 10 seconds left. Oh, that. Hanging out with my buddies up in North Georgia, we were so pumped, and then so deflated.
I don't have one. I only remember the good times, only the wins in my life.
I like this, Anita. I like this.
Let's not talk about the losses. Let's just focus on the wins.
Yeah, I do love that. So
That's what's
Howard,
the answer that most people give.
Howard and Ron gave the two answers that we get most often. Those are the
Which one was
two.
yours? The national championship with Bama.
Oh, the first year. Year one, yeah.
Yeah, those are the two big ones that folks get, and it's really interesting. My buddy and I that I do the show with, I love watching people's body language now when I ask this question because it's like the shoulders just kind of like die, and you can see them in their brain replaying what happened. So yeah, y'all hit both of them.
You're about to make me cry again, Seth. You about to make me cry again, man.
I will say, if my co-host and I were naming games, those two would probably be ours too. We were actually together watching the national title game they lost, so which was just a whole whirlwind of emotions, anyways, because of the way the fourth quarter ended, and then for all that to happen in overtime. I told him, it literally felt like someone removed the bones from my legs, and I just collapsed from the waist down. It was not great, not great. Okay, so last question I'll ask you guys. Who is your favorite Georgia Bulldog of all time?
I'll take a stab at this one. I'm going to say Hines Ward because
that's a good one.
Georgia is not known for, we're usually known for defense and a running game, but the way he played wide receiver, like with so much physicality, and he was, just dominated in the NFL too, and high character guy. And I think he's part Asian, which I love. So I'm going to say Hines Ward. That guy is, for me, a damn good dog.
Excellent answer. Also, answer we have not had yet. Excellent answer.
I don't have a good answer. I mean, I would just say I've been, mostly because of Howard. He sends me all these gifts and videos from Coach Smart. He's just so inspirational, man. I want that guy in my pocket like every day, just cheer me on, motivating me, and just God, the guy, he's insane.
He played good. He was a scrappy safety. He intercepted Manning a few times. Yeah, it's tough for me, man. I mean, I guess kind of like, Stetson's story is pretty badass, but, I love Brock. I love Ladd. I mean, watching them just out there playing Brock's just, I mean, it was just fun to watch Brock play, so.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, you bring up a lot. I want to ask you guys something that is a theory of mine. He's obviously been super successful as a head coach, and I don't think anybody questions that he is now, with Coach Saban retiring, the head coach in college football. But if he was not coaching football, do you guys have any doubt that Kirby Paul Smart could be like CEO of a Fortune 500 company? Or I just feel like he's one of those type guys where whatever the vocation ended up being, the excellence would still be the standard.
Yeah.
The profession would
a lot of those soft skills are transferable from industry to industry. You may not know the craft or the technical side of it, but all that you can learn. It's the leadership, it's accountability, it's can you motivate? Those are the skills that can transfer and lead and bring you success in other industries.
He'd have a lot more car dealerships than Saban. Let's put it that way.
I love that. I love that. All right, guys. Well, look, I am like so appreciative of your time today. I know how busy y'all are, and I just have loved hearing your story. Most important thing before y'all leave, please tell our listeners how they can support y'all.
Yeah, I mean, we've got you coming, on the 14th. Come check out Sweet Auburn Barbecue. Come watch some games with us. Cheer on the dogs. We've got Gezzo's. We've got 3 locations. One on the Upper West Side of Atlanta. 2 down in Henry County. Lazy Betty is, amazing brand new location on Peachtree, and then of course Tio Lucho's on North Highland, and then our second Sweet Auburn location also down in Henry County.
Yeah, come see us.
Spend your money at our restaurants. That'll help.
Yeah, no, I'd say for all the listeners out there, I love meeting people. I love meeting dog fans. I'm usually at Sweet Auburn the most, so if so come on in, and we got some nice, we got some creature comforts on draft. So come on in and mention Saturday in Athens or Seth or whatever. Just come meet me, man. Let me buy you a beer. Let me buy you a creature comforts.
Yeah, and we also do catering. We've got 3 food trucks, so let us come cater your next tailgate party or company outing. So yeah, we got it all.
Yeah, follow us on Instagram. We check that a lot. We have our own personal, but of course our businesses too.
All right, we're going to link all that in the show notes, all the restaurant websites, all the socials. Everybody go follow. Look, obviously, if you have listened to this episode and taken nothing away, this is obviously 3 DGDs. So please go and support them. Love their story. And we will close today by saying thank you and saying what we always do, which is go dogs.
Go dogs.
Pick 'em.